Hi, this is Shirley, continuing on with becoming my first 20 years. Every year in Seattle was a big Seafair parade, and complete with the huge parade and boat shows, it was the big event of the year. Dad walks the street of Seattle every day on his job and was asked to buy a Seafair button. Only $1, the seller offered, and it gives you a chance for that beautiful 24-foot cabin cruiser. Well, for only $1, what could Dad lose? And besides, it helps support his city. Sure, why not? A few days later, a phone call came. Mr. Egbert, your number has been drawn in the Seafair sweepstakes. You have just won a 24-foot cabin cruiser. It was really true. Out of the thousands of people who had entered, Dad's name was drawn. We went down to see our new boat. It was a beauty, all right. Sleek, big, and ready for touring Puget Sound. But Mom and Dad weren't really sailors at heart. What we really needed was a car. Our old 41 Chev was getting in pretty bad shape. We went to a dealership and talked over a trade. Yes, it could be worked out. We took the color charts home and dreamed over the colors we'd choose. My choice was green. Others thought maybe blue or white or brown. Blue finally won out, and we went to bring our dream car home. It was a brand new 1954 Ford station wagon. Wow, was it ever fun, riding for miles around, waving at our friends, and seeing their surprised looks at us in our brand new car. Next chapter is called Setting My Sights. Sometimes we went to visit Dad's sister Lila and her family. I always liked Lila's big, loving hugs. Her oldest daughter was named Lila Carroll, and she was 10 years older than I. Lila Carroll took off for Venezuela when I was 9. After completing a stint at New Tribes Mission boot camp, she was heading out for the jungles of South America to be a missionary to the Indians there. She would be riding a boat down the Orinoco River and setting up her simple home in the jungle amid the native savages. This was not just interesting to me, it was captivating and drawing. I wanted to do what she was doing. The Lord was putting a definite direction in my life. I knew I wanted to be involved in telling people about Jesus. And maybe it could be in some remote jungle. Next chapter, 5th grade romances. Tinkle, tinkle went the 4 pennies into the garbage can. I didn't want milk, but neither did I want Mom to see the money and realizing that I wasn't buying it. So into the garbage went my daily 4 cents. The teacher discovered it and questioned me. I began buying milk after that. My first 5th grade teacher got Army draft papers at semester time. We liked Mr. Helsel and were sad he might have to leave us and go into the Army. Until it was official, though, no one in our class was supposed to tell anyone, not even our parents. But Janet told, and boy, did we all get on her case. I told too, but wasn't about to let anybody know. There were 3 men in my life in 5th grade. Before that, I'd never cared much for boys except as pals, and didn't again till I was older. But age 10 must have been the magic romantic year. First was Steve Garling, our pastor's 11-year-old son. We had sword fern fights and played knife baseball together. In more serious moments, he even kissed me 25 times. Steve was a handsome fellow, and our month-long romance gave me some happy memories. The second was Mike Smith in my school class. He played with dolls, so the other boys thought he was a sissy and wouldn't play with him. But I thought he was pretty special, and we enjoyed recess together. The last was Mr. McMahon. He replaced the drafted school teacher, and my desk was positioned next to his, near the back of the room. There, we secretly held hands together. He was my first and only teacher crush. Besides fractions and boys, my other main activities in the 5th grade were using sign language and tetherball. Every letter had a hand motion, and we kids would carry on long conversations in utmost quietness. It beat writing notes every day, anytime. Outside, I was a smash at tetherball. While pounding it into space one day, I heard a resounding, earth-shaking boom. Had I hit it that hard? No, actually, a jet had just broken through the sound barrier. We sometimes had fire drills at school, but more often air raids and drills. Russia and the United States were in a Cold War, and the possible threat of a nuclear bomb was very real. We practiced walking in an orderly fashion down Old Bottle Way in the direction of Everett if the alarm sounded. Sputnik went up in space near that time. We got out the binoculars at night and watched it fly through the starry sky. And we were mad at those Russians for beating us out. I decided to take up flute in 5th grade. The sound was so pretty, and I just knew it would be my very favorite instrument. Prepared to master it quickly, I got my flute and my book and went to class. Following instructions, I pursed my lips together just right and blew. No melodious tones. Again, squeak. Again, only air. I lost my book after lesson 2. My teacher warned me not to lose a replacement book, so I put it carefully in my notebook and continued trying to make music. Dud. Then I lost my second book. I didn't dare show my face in music class again. I did excel in English, though. I was known as the walking dictionary and was the last one standing in nearly every spelling bee. I decided in 5th grade it would be a good time to start curling my hair. All the other girls did, and I started feeling pressured to conform a bit. So out came the clippies. I took each little section of hair and wound it around and around, and then set it with the clippy. I wet my hair first because I heard that would give you a better curl. It took time and effort, but I finally got all my hair wound up and secured. Then I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and took out the clippies. Wow, I really did get curls. I wound the sections of hair in all different directions, though, so the hair now went in all directions too. I was pretty proud of it, though, and showed off the new curly look in school. Back home again, I got pretty sick one day. Lying on the couch, I had a fever and felt miserable. Vonnie and her friend Joni were looking after me. Suddenly, that unmistakable throw-up feeling came. Oh, I ran for the bathroom. Partway there, I realized I'd never make it, so I made a quick U-turn and returned to the couch, laying a sizable deposit all over it. Vonnie was undoubtedly full of bliss as she and Joni got to clean up little sister's mess. The next chapter, from bikes to cars. I love to ride my bike. It was a good workout to push the bike clear up steep Hinman's Hill, but it was worth it. And then I turned around, got a good fast start, flung my arms out, and first the wind blew through my hair as I sped faster and faster to the gully below. Ecstasy, freedom, a pure thrill. There was a little swamp in the dip just at the base of Hinman's Hill. Here skunk cabbage grew profusely, and its aroma wafted through the air on hot summer days. We passed by on our bikes and stopped to sniff them, as well as dig our toes into the squishy blacktop that the sun was melting. Judy was 8 and loved rocks. She collected pretty rocks wherever she went and brought more and more home. Most of them were just the gray rocks beside the road, but she loved them. After a while, though, her fascination dimmed, and she went on to other pursuits. But Mom and Dad had picked up the fever. They became serious rockhounds for years. I learned to drive early. Leaning over the front seat behind Dad at 9, I steered to his pleasure and Mom's distress. By 10, though just barely able to see over the top of the steering wheel, I was maneuvering my car to the dentist in Lake City. We were proud of the gold stars the dentist gave us for being good in his chair, but I felt most elated about my accomplishments with the car. I love to drive. Next chapter is called Snow and Sunshine. Snow came often in the mid-50s. We built snow forts in our front yard and had rip-roaring battles. Once we built an igloo and climbed inside. We felt like real Eskimos. My favorite snow sport, though, was sledding. The mile-long hike to the golf course was well worth it, with long hills and bumpy jumps. It was the best sledding spot around. At 10, I got my first watch for Christmas. I was delighted with such a grown-up gift. But sadly, the band came loose in our snow play, and the watch was lost forever under mounds of concealing snow. Barb and her sister and I and my sisters had a special camp. They had moved into the house in the gully just down the road. Up from their house was a perfect spot for our camp. We brought in moss, planted flowers, smoothed off the log, and made a mini Garden of Eden. Barb was younger than me, but we got along. One day, we discovered a caterpillar tent in a fruit tree 150 feet from our house. Wanting to do what was right and proper, we decided to burn them out. We poured on the gas and found matches to light. The caterpillars were burning all right, but so was the grass and everything else. We ran to our house and loaded bucket after bucket of water from the outside faucets. Huffing and puffing from our running, we stomped on the spreading fire and poured on the buckets. Barb went home with singed eyebrows, but we finally got it out. Nobody was supposed to pick blueberries at Munn's Blueberry Farm till they were maybe 12. But I was pretty responsible and got hired early. Grandma Egbert had decided to learn to drive again in her old age. She could then get to town independently, as well as get us to the blueberry fields. Backing out of the yard onto the road, though, she never watched for traffic. Dad said to her once, "Watch for oncoming cars, Mom." "Oh, Donald," she retorted, "there's hardly ever anybody there." She soon gave up her driving attempts, and I took over the blueberry transportation. In the mornings, the air was still chilly and the ground wet with dew in the blueberry fields. By afternoon, though, it was hot. One day it hit 117 degrees out in the field. I walked to the water faucet by the shed, filled my wide-brimmed straw hat with water, and plopped it on my head. Oh, that cold water running all down me felt like heaven. I looked kind of silly, like a real pilgrim with my wide hat and straight hair. But I didn't care. I was comfortable. Next chapter, almost a teenager. At school, I started 6th grade, top of the elementary line. Our teacher, Mr. Spar, thought that first names were confusing, so I was just Egbert that year, and my friends were Celine, Hobson, Freeling, and Schmalm. Joe Schmalm was short, so short that we took the class average height with Joe and without him. We studied Greek mythology that year and Egyptian culture. A friend and I got to take yards of butcher paper out into the hallway and drew a picture of ancient Egyptian findings. My favorite was the Rosetta Stone. One girl in class thought she was pretty tough. She and her friends decided to pick me for their target one day. "Be outside on the other side of the gym today after school, and we're going to beat you up. You better be there if you know what's good for you." Butterflies filled my stomach. I was scared. But I also wasn't about to get intimidated. I showed up. So did they. My arrival must have surprised them because after a few tough words to maintain their egos in front of one another, they left, never laying a hand on me, nor did they ever bother me again. Uncle Lawrence used to live in Grand Coulee. He had helped build Grand Coulee Dam, the biggest dam in all the world. We liked going over to visit him and his family when we were little. But as we grew into early adolescence, he moved to Kennewick, Washington. Our family decided to spend a couple days there, and Judy and I walked a couple blocks away to look over the scene. Pretty soon it began approaching dusk, and we noticed that a drive-in movie was about to start. We could almost see the picture on the big screen. Wishing we could go in, we mourned the fact that we had no money along. 2 teenage boys drove up in their car and came over to talk. We mentioned how we'd like to see the movie but had no money, and the walls were too high to sneak over. Oh, well, we guess we just go home. Well, we don't have any extra money either, but we could get you in. You could just climb into the trunk of our car, and we'd let you out when you get inside. What do you say? Judy and I looked at each other. That might be a neat idea, we thought. Well, I don't know. Yeah, come on, they urged. Well, I guess we better not. Thanks anyway. And they drove away. Next chapter, Missouri Farm. A big family adventure came when I was 13. Mom hadn't seen her dad in 12 years, and seen her mom only once during that time. Off we went in our 54 Ford across the country. It was to be an economical trip, and camping was fun, so we slept in tents. Every night, the car-top carrier got unloaded, and Mom and Dad set up the tent and cooked dinner over the Coleman stove. I helped a bit, but was more interested in exploring the area. One night we camped at Great Salt Lake, and we weren't the only ones. The beautiful summer weather had brought hundreds of campers to the scene, and I took off across the vast beach to check everything out. Campfires were everywhere with a conglomeration of tents, campers, and picnic tables. Suddenly, I noticed something. It had gotten dark. Wow, I better head back. But I hadn't realized how far I'd gone. I kept looking for our camp, car, and family. I couldn't find anybody but strangers. I began getting scared. It was so dark I couldn't see much. Where were they? My parents were wondering the same about me, and were starting to get really worried. Finally, I got back to the camp and breathed a sigh of relief. I really didn't want to get stranded 1,000 miles from home. Nearing our Missouri destination, we looked into the Kansas sky and saw a big black cloud. But it wasn't a rain cloud. What was it? It's locusts, I was told. They're like huge grasshoppers, and they swarm down into the farmland and ate all the green in sight. We finally arrived and got kissed by Grandma and hugged by my grandpa. I never remembered seeing him before. Mom's brother Jim and his family were there too. I liked to imitate their southern drawls. I loved the farm, 240 acres to roam and explore. Their barn had been built by slave labor 100 years before, and the grave of a departed slave still had its markers by a tree in the field. Grandpa had grown up on this farm, and he'd taken it over at his parents' death about 18 years before. He built 2 ponds way out across the rolling hills and had stocked them with catfish. Grandpa took us down there to fish, or just watch the whiskered swimmers. We got to drink fresh, warm milk from the cow and eat Grandma's delicious home-canned plums. The men always worked outside, and Grandma and the women cooked inside or sat around the table talking about recipes and past good times. Time came to go, and we headed north to Rapid City, North Dakota. As we rolled into the town, we saw dents on many cars and wondered why. "A huge hailstorm hit here last night," the residents replied. We were glad we hadn't been ahead of schedule. Yellowstone was next on our way home. Old Faithful was so awesome, and so were the bubbling mud pots and the obsidian cliffs. I never wandered off too far in this area, as I didn't know when the ground might cave in and I'd be history. Next chapter, Cottage Lake Press, or Presbyterian. A few years earlier, our fire station church had grown and moved to a log building the men had built 2 miles away. One day, Judy, Vonnie, and I were playing in the new church parking lot after services. I was generally a good shot. I could pitch well at baseball or get my knife in a tree from a distance. But I guess Vonnie didn't think I was so good at throwing rocks. At least not after one painful incident. It had been quite rainy, but now the clouds had parted and it felt good to be outside. The rain, happily for us, had left a huge puddle outside. We ran to it and grabbed rocks to throw in and splash. I stood at one end of the mini lake and Vonnie at the other. Splash! We threw in rock after rock and watched the big spraying droplets shooting upward. Then I grabbed an especially enticing boulder and flung it with all my might. Ow! Vonnie was crying and holding her head. I had completely missed the water and overshot clear to her forehead. Ouch! I always memorized verses, did my lesson, and seldom missed a church meeting. I felt secure in this and tried to act religious, although I knew inside I'd never genuinely committed my life to Christ. One summer, I was president of my junior age young people's group and helped in Vacation Bible School. The VBS students were divided into reds and blues, and I got to help with the blue team. Attendance, memory work, and bringing visitors added to the scores. The winning team would be able to go on a picnic at the lake. The kids worked hard and faithfully for 2 weeks. The results were tallied, and my team won. I went home and told my parents that I'd get to go to the picnic too. Dad was troubled. All the kids had worked hard. Why should one whole team get completely left out of the picnic just because their points had been less? He suggested that I not go as a protest because the setup was unfair. I gave his plan a lot of thought, but he left it up to me and the picnic won out. But it wasn't much fun. My sense of conscious and fair play was merging. Shows were a sin in my church, but Mom and Dad weren't quite convinced that was true. So every once in a while, our family would go to the Avon Theater in Bothell and sneak a viewing of Cinderella, The King and I, or Bambi. One evening, while standing in line for our tickets, we saw the Muns. A couple from our church, they were in line too. We all wanted to hide from each other, but we all caught each other in our sneakiness. So we laughed in a bit of embarrassment and mutual kidding and went in and saw the movie together. When I was 11, our church broke up. The pastor was our friend, but his teachings against lipstick, short sleeves, movies, etc. were wearing on people. He even counseled one man to divorce his wife because she was wearing lipstick and a little rouge. An undercurrent of discontent grew, and finally, several suggested that Bob leave the church. An official vote was about to be taken. Bob fought for his position. He felt he was right. Church attenders took sides. Dad and the pastor were co-workers at a job in Seattle. In fact, Bob had gotten Dad the job. The sense of loyalty to his friend, and yet the growing sense that the church could no longer sit under his leadership, caused a difficult battle for Dad. But when the vote came, he had to follow his conscience and voted for Bob to leave. A new pastor came, and the church voted to become Presbyterian. I took the catechism class and decided to officially join the church. To make sure I was qualified, the new pastor asked if I'd ever been baptized. Yes, when I was a baby, I replied. That sufficed, and I was made an official member at age 12. Next chapter, cancer. My friend died of cancer that year. She'd fallen a year before and gotten a sore that refused to heal. The doctor discovered she had cancer and her lower leg was amputated in an effort to save her life. We kids love to go to Janice's home, especially now. Using her crutches, we all had races across her living room. We lifted one leg to be like Janice and tore across the large wooden floor. It was a jolly time. After a while, though, Janice got worse and had to be hospitalized. Our Sunday school class got her a Christmas present, small hula hoops for her arms. We hoped she liked them. I was the only youngster to go to prayer meeting in our church, but I was faithfully there. Every Wednesday night, I'd see Janice's mother in the hallway at church and ask, "How's Janice?" "Oh, pretty well," she would respond. Then, "Not so good this week." After some months, my friend leaped from that hospital bed into the arms of the Savior she loved. After that, I knew I must have cancer. After all, I'd heard about the 7 danger signals of cancer. I couldn't remember exactly what they were, but I was sure I must have them. White spots on my fingernails, a sore spot on my heel, a tendency to clear my throat a lot. It was settled in my mind that I only had some months to live. My family would miss them, but I would be brave and tell no one. I wondered, though, if I'd go to heaven. I sometimes dreamed of Judgment Day, standing before God, then falling into the darkness of hell. Yet because everyone thought I was a Christian, I was reluctant to accept Christ now and admit that I hadn't been a real one all along. Next chapter, I'm proud of you. I had started going to Lake Sammamish Bible Camp when I was 11, enjoying the swimming, horseshoes, and tetherball, as well as loving missionary counselors and challenging spiritual atmosphere. I looked forward to camp each year, and it became the highlight of my summers. The counselors there made it clear that the world was divided into 2 parts, saved and lost, and there was no middle ground. I figured I was lost, but couldn't find courage to make a decision. Every year I went home from camp, disappointed that I hadn't accepted Christ, but I always thought, well, maybe next year. The summer before ninth grade, I went again to camp. The week was slipping by, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I still hadn't made the step. Thursday came. During the group devotions in our dorm, the counselor told of the tribulation and hell. I decided I didn't want to go through that. I realized, too, how much Jesus really loved me. That night, in my bunk, for half an hour, I kept asking Jesus to come in my heart and trying to make sure he was there. Then I slept. The next day, I woke up with a happiness that I had never known before. I was too shy to tell many people about this, though. But my first witnessing experience came a few weeks later. I was back in the berry fields again, picking across the raspberry row. From me was a wino from Seattle, one of a number shipped in daily at the farm. He mentioned something in the scriptures that he did not believe. Mustering all my courage, I blurted out, "Well, it says so in the Bible, and that's what I believe." This closed the conversation, but not the incident. That night, as I was on my way home, a car pulled over, and the driver asked if our group of three wanted a ride. Tired, we said, "Sure," and climbed in. "I'm proud of you," were the next words I heard. Surprised, I looked up and saw that the driver had spoken these words to me. "Why? What for?" I queried. "I heard you stand up for the Lord today," she commended. She was a Christian and did a good job of encouraging me. Next chapter, Vonnie and Judy. Cold War had represented much of my childhood with big sister Vonnie. Sometimes it was peaceful coexistence, but often erupted into skirmishes. During one battle, we tore into each other, fingernails and all, and I emerged with a lifelong